We take some preliminary measurements of our target test cam here, to get a ballpark idea of the clearances. The cam journal to cam bearing is still on the high side. If it is confirmed by our machine shop with our new cam as well, we will try to take up some of the clearance by using coated cam bearings. But our cam lift test on this cam that has 50,000 miles on it is going to end up being inconclusive. We can't produce an invoice with a part number on it that determines what we started with. The customer swears that it's a 290 horse version because that's what the parts guy told him when he went down there to purchase it. And anyway, the 294 version is it's perplexing because, it's 8 or 8.5 to 1, 76 cc, 450, 460, 222 duration at 50, hydraulic flat tappet, 194, 150, 290 horse. Then on the other hand, we have an L31. That's also a crate motor. It's available. It's got Vortec heads. They're cast iron. 64 cc chambers. 414, 428 lift. 191, 196 duration at 50. It's a hydraulic roller. It's got 9.4 to 1. And it's rated at 255 horse. To our way of thinking, this should be reversed. But all we know from the test is that we don't have any bad lifters. We have no flattened lobes on the cam. We have no damage. And we know how everything looks at 50,000 miles. This engine was removed from the vehicle because the owner thought he heard a rod starting to knock. That turned out to be a cracked flex plate. My personal opinion is this engine it's a 190, 230 horse version. There's no way to prove it. That's only my opinion. So the bottom line, inconclusive. While we're at it, we might as well get a valve spring off that target test engine, the cylinder head that was running on it at the time when it was running. Here's a trick little tool. It's for the valve spring retainer keepers. It's magnetic and they go right to it. Well, we got 110 seat 285 open. Here's a perfect example of purchasing something you wanted to use, but you can't get there from here. And it's no one's fault. It just is. For me, I want to use the baffle more than I want to use the stands or the vents. So the stands have to go. When you're going to start putting in the baffle, this is what you start with. This is called the spring. That's what has to be adjusted down, ground down. Here's a shot of the spring. It's attached to the baffle, and it's going to sit underneath the intake manifold, which is going to keep it stationary. It's right here. Here's a good shot of the spring. It's bolted to the baffle, and then the intake manifold sits on it. So you've got to, it's pretty precision grinding. It's got to be right and square. I started with the one on the right, and I ended up with the one on the left. I initially cut the spring down about 1/2 inch on each side to start with. And then, I put the head gaskets on, the heads, the intake manifold gasket, and then all I was left with was the space in between the bottom of the manifold and the block, where the silicone would be, front and back of the intake manifold. So then I shimmed that distance up with feeler gauges, and then that way I could, adjust my spring, cut what I had to cut, and then go over to the grinder and grind, so you cut for the first little bit, and then you grind the rest of the way because, you're getting close. So then you just got to make sure that the left and right, because sometimes you have to cut just the right side because, you look at the space where the intake manifold is going to meet the block. The silicone's not there, so it's really easy to tell if it's square. So you just, whatever side is high, you lower it, keep going. Finally, you get it. The front one is the adjusted one. The rear one, of course, that's what you start with. And that's the way it sits on this manifold, which is an air gap, vortex air gap. Depending on your block, some trimming of the baffle may be necessary. And when you got it, pretty well where you think it's going to be, then you have to rotate the engine to make sure the push rod's clear. And if they don't, you have to trim basically whatever doesn't fit. You got to go in there and trim. And if you're using a rotor cam, enlarging the holes will be necessary. My friend was telling me that he spread the spring ends under the cylinder heads, but I'm going to keep mine under the intake manifold. For me, that works best. Seeing how we aren't using the stands, we're not going to leave the holes just bare. We're going to put these neat little preformed stainless steel screens in those holes. We're going to epoxy those in. So we'll have the front and back screens, and then those 8 holes where the stands would go, we'll have those screens epoxied into them, and that should pretty well take care of any catastrophic damage valve train wise. It won't be going to the bottom end.